Thanks everyone for being here today for this webinar presented by Behavioral Economics in Action at Rotman in partnership with the Behavioral Science and Policy Association. This is sadly our 9th and final webinar of the academic year, but we promise to have more coming up next. My name is Patrick Rooney, and I'm a second-year PhD in strategy at Rotman, a BEAR research coordinator and the moderator for today's webinar. Behavioral Economics in Action at Rotman, or BEAR, is a research center at the University of Toronto's Rotman School of Management, whose 3 programmatic missions are to research, educate, and engage in meaningful outreach with our academic, governmental, and industry partners. These monthly webinars are our way to hear firsthand from academics and practitioners who are making a meaningful impact in the world of behavioral insights, and in particular, behaviorally informed business and evidence-based public policy. We are delighted today to have Marcie McKay from the Financial Consumer Agency of Canada, who will be talking to us today about initiating budgeting behavior through targeted financial education. Before we hear from Marcie, I would like to go over the ground rules for this webinar. Following the introduction, the speaker will deliver a 35-minute presentation. During this presentation, submit questions for our speaker by clicking the chat tab at the top right of your WebEx screen and typing into the entry box. These questions will be visible to all of the participants. At the end of the talk, and with time permitting, we'll have a question and answer session in which I will select questions from the chat tab to ask our speaker. As a side note, please only use the Q&A tab of WebEx connectivity issues and send these technical Q&As privately to Liz Kang, who is our WebEx technical guru who is at the ready to wait any of your problems. So with all of that being said, thank you so much, Marcie, for being here today, and the floor is yours.
Hello all. Thank you, Patrick. It's a real pleasure for me to be here today to present some of the research of the Financial Consumer Agency of Canada. I'm a Senior Research and Policy Officer here at the agency. I've been here for about 3 years now. I'll display my contact information at the end of this presentation, and please feel free to get in touch with me about any of the research that the agency is conducting. I would be really happy to hear from you. So today I'm going to be presenting the results of a research project related to budgeting. And this is a project that the agency conducted through the Carrot Rewards mobile application. So just before diving into the results of our research, I wanted to provide you with a very quick overview of the National Research Plan for Financial Literacy and share with you what we've been learning about budgeting research and financial decision making. And this will provide you with some context behind why we conducted this budgeting research through the Carrot Rewards app. And it'll also provide a better understanding of some of the Financial Consumer Agency of Canada, or FCC's, research interests. The budgeting research that I will be presenting today is one of the projects that falls under the National Research Plan for Financial Literacy, and it's contributing directly to the implementation of the plan. So I think it's just important for you to understand how this small project fits into the bigger picture. And of course, I'll share the results of our research and talk about some of the next steps. So very quickly, the National Research Plan for Financial Literacy can be considered a roadmap for financial literacy research. It is certainly driving our areas of focus at the agency and is intended for, to provide a channel for researchers for collaboration and coordination with others on research initiatives. So the areas of focus of our research plan are budgeting, paying down household debt, building savings, and choosing financial products and services. An environmental scan determined that Canadians are facing important issues in each of these 4 topic areas. We know that not enough Canadians have a budget, household debt levels are rising, and it's becoming more and more difficult for Canadians to make ends meet. We also know that savings rates in Canada are at an all-time low, and financial products and services are becoming increasingly complex. So the National Research Plan is really intended to be an evergreen document, and of course these areas of focus will be updated as emerging trends and issues arise. The plan is structured in a way that outlines what the research is telling us in each of these areas, and identifies projects that will be undertaken. It's a tool for researchers, but it's also very useful for practitioners who want to know what works and what doesn't. As projects are completed, the findings will be integrated within the plan and used to inform program improvements and future research. And the Carrot Rewards budgeting research that I'll be presenting is one of the projects that fall under the budgeting theme. So just a quick plug, if you are conducting research in any of these 4 areas and would like to have some more information about the National Research Plan, please don't hesitate to get in contact with me. I'd be happy to share that information with you. And we just released a progress report on the National Research Plan. So if you Google Progress Report, National Research Plan for Financial Literacy, you'll have access to a full document providing summary of all the projects that have been contributing to the plan over the last 2 years and a direct link to each of the research papers as well. So moving into what we know about budgeting. We know from recent research that there may be no better tool to reach financial goals than a personal budget. For example, research from the US demonstrates that budgets work because they help people prioritize their expenses. And they are particularly effective when someone is under financial stress. We also know from the Financial Capability Survey that only 46% of Canadians have a budget, but of those who do, 93% of them stay always or usually within it. And this trend held across all demographic, education, and income groups that we studied. So meaning that regardless of the differences in demographics, people who had a budget tended to stick with it. So of course the agency wanted to know about how to enable more people to start budgeting. We also know from literature that knowledge on its own does not consistently lead to behavioral change. And this finding is quite consistent with various disciplines. So for example, many people know that donuts are unhealthy, but when presented with the option, they may choose to eat one. And the choices that we make are often influenced by contextual and environmental factors, as well as cognitive biases and behavioral tendencies like our emotions and our instant need for gratification. At the agency, we define financial literacy as having the knowledge, confidence, and skills to make informed financial decisions. But a growing number of research studies are providing insights about the factors that complement financial knowledge. And we're seeing that financial confidence, for example, appears to be a strong predictor of financial behavior. Research is also demonstrating that financial education that precedes a financial decision is most impactful. So this is suggesting the importance of just-in-time financial education. Studies have shown that simple email and text message reminders have positive impacts on behavior. For example, one study that comes to mind is a US-based research project that examined the impact of automated reminders on credit outcomes among credit counseling clients. So this study was conducted because an evaluation of the credit counseling program was showing that the initiative was having positive impacts on reducing debt levels, but was not having the desired impact on payment delinquencies and credit scores. So what the research found was that when automated reminders had a significant impact on the payment delinquencies and credit scores, but no impact on revolving debt. So this research really suggests that automated reminders are an important and fairly low-cost complement to traditional credit counseling. So given what we know about budgeting, financial decision-making, and the use of mobile technology to deliver just-in-time messaging, FCC was seeking a mechanism for delivering financial literacy messages directly to consumers who did not have a budget in order to help them build their knowledge, their confidence, and their skills related to budgeting. So now let me tell you about the Carrot Rewards mobile application itself. The Carrot Rewards mobile app is an application that encourages Canadians to adopt healthier lifestyles. And specifically, the app offers consumer loyalty reward points in exchange for performing small tasks like reading a short text, answering basic questions, taking quizzes, and watching short videos. The application was developed by a private Canadian company called Carrot Insights with a grant that they received from the Public Health Agency of Canada. And this initiative is part of a Government of Canada multi-sectoral approach to promote healthy living and prevent chronic illnesses. The Public Health Agency of Canada and Carrot Insights are currently working with the provincial ministries of health to roll this initiative out across the country. And the Carrot app is currently available in 3 Canadian provinces, so in British Columbia, Newfoundland, and Ontario. And you're probably wondering, how does financial literacy fit into this picture? Well, both the Public Health Agency of Canada and Carrot Insights share a holistic vision that includes financial well-being. And recognizing that financial stress can be very detrimental to someone's health, it is important for Canadians to be equipped with the knowledge, the confidence, and the skills that they need to manage their personal finances and improve their financial well-being. So from the agency's perspective, the mobile app was viewed as an innovative tool that could be used to help support Canadians towards achieving this goal. And what we wanted to do at the agency is we wanted to test whether or not our consumer education materials had an impact on knowledge, confidence, and behaviors related to budgeting. So over the course of 1 month, we sent a series of financial education messages and questions to consumers, and we tracked how they responded. So each intervention contained a series of 5 or 6 questions to measure changes in all 3 of our metrics of interest, so knowledge, confidence, and behavior. And I'll show you an example of these throughout my presentation. We used a pre and post design to measure impact. And the first offer, or the first intervention, served to identify individuals who had a budget and those who did not. And the objective here was really to exclude individuals who already had a budget from the group slated to receive interventions 2 and 3. We wanted to evaluate if the application helped modify the behavior, so we targeted those who did not have a budget. The second and third interventions were only completed by those who didn't have a budget. And this is the data that I'll be showing you in this presentation. Also, we learned that of the people who answered intervention 1, about half of them didn't have a budget. And that proportion was consistent with our CFCS data, or Canadian Financial Capability Survey data, where we saw about 46% of Canadians didn't have a budget. In interventions 2 and 3, we learned more about our non-budgeters. Nearly half of them, but 44% of them, said they didn't know where to begin when thinking about budgeting. So this really reinforced our view that financial literacy has an important role to play in enabling consumers to begin budgeting. So we first applied the methodology in 2016 when we conducted a pilot to target non-budgeters in BC and Newfoundland. And we have a report that's published on our website describing these results. And then in 2017, 2018, the agency continued its budgeting research. Sorry, I just saw a message from Liz. Are you able to hear me okay? Oh, yeah. Okay, good. So then in 2017, September 2017, we extended our pilot to users in Ontario using the previously developed materials that we had firstly used in BC and Newfoundland. And you'll see we made some slight changes just based on the learnings from our research. So now to the findings. And I'll present the findings in 3 parts. The first set will be more descriptive, so it will talk about the pre and post changes in knowledge, confidence, and behavior. And this is an example of one of the knowledge-based questions that we used. But again, just remember that each intervention usually contains about 5 or 6 of these questions. And you'll notice that regardless of the answer, we provide a consumer education material, and that's what you see on the right. So in terms of knowledge, what we saw was at the end of our intervention, so at intervention 3, our results indicated that consumers were more knowledgeable about budgeting. We had about a 10 percentage point increase in BC and Newfoundland, and about a 4% percentage increase in Ontario. And you're probably wondering why the difference, and one explanation that I have for you was that in BC and Newfoundland, the question was negatively framed. So it's in a balanced budget, your income should not, and we had the answer be less than your expenses. But in Ontario, we decided to frame this question positively and say your income should, and then the answer was be more than your expenses. So that explains a bit the differences that we're seeing here. But again, result is still very positive. In terms of confidence, this is our confidence question. How confident are you in your ability to make and follow a budget? And again, a consumer education message here on the right. And what we saw was that at the end of our intervention, consumers were more confident in their budgeting skills. So we saw a 16 percentage point increase in BC and Newfoundland, and quite similarly, a 17% increase in Ontario. In terms of behavior, do you currently have a budget to help you keep track of your money? And what we saw at the end of our analysis was that 14% of our non-budgeters began to budget in BC and Newfoundland, and 23% of our non-budgeters in Ontario began to use a budget in Ontario. And again, we did a slight modification to this question, so potentially resulting in the difference that you see here. So we removed one of the response options that said, yes, I've had a budget for more than 6 months, because the timing of the behavior didn't reflect the timing of our program. So we only offered the interventions over a 4-week period. So for people to tell us, no, they didn't have a budget, and then within the span of 4 weeks say, yes, I've had one for more than 6 months, it was flawed. So we decided to remove those or exclude those responses in the BC and Newfoundland group. So in reality, if we would have included them, it would have been in the 20% points as well. In Ontario, we decided to take away that option altogether. So the response was, yes, I've created a budget for more than 30 days, or I've had a budget for more than 30 days. So these next set of findings will focus on examining confidence over the duration of the pilot. And you won't find these findings in the published report. We've just finalized the results using the Ontario data only. So before we get into the results, I just want to provide a quick refresher. So we had three interventions. The first intervention identified our budgeters and our non-budgeters. The budgeters were excluded, and our non-budgeters received interventions 2 and interventions 3. When we were doing our analysis, we noticed that some of our non-budgeters who said that they started budgeting at intervention 2 decided to stop budgeting by intervention 3. And this was about 8% of our sample. And these people we refer to as our discontinuers. The people who started budgeting at intervention 2 and carried out the behavior until the end of our pilot or our program were called our persistent budgeters. And we wanted to do some additional analyses to examine the differences between both of these groups. So our results demonstrate that budgeting behavior and confidence to budget are positively related. In the beginning of our pilot, confidence levels of our persistent budgeters were 9 percentage points higher than those of the discontinuers. So we're comparing the 57% to the 48%. By the end of our pilot, we see that the confidence levels of those who persisted with the budgeting behavior were 21 percentage points higher than those who discontinued the budgeting behavior. And those are the blue columns that we're looking at. We also saw that an overall lower proportion of females were confident in their ability to make and follow a budget when compared to males. The confidence levels of the male discontinuers were comparable to those of the persistent budgeters at the beginning of the pilot. So that's the 64 and the 63% that we're looking at. However, at the end of the pilot, the blue columns, we see that the discontinuers, both males and females, were less confident than those who persisted with the budgeting behavior. And for females, it's the blue columns 81 versus 54%. And with the males, it's the 90 versus the 81% that we're looking at here. Now, these last findings will report on behavior, and it's specifically for those who indicated that they did not know where to begin budgeting. Again, you won't find these findings in the published report, and they were conducted only using the Ontario data. So just before diving into the findings, I want to note that 44% of non-budgeters reported that they did not know where to begin budgeting. And this result was consistent in Newfoundland and BC, as well as in Ontario. So when examining how these individuals translated their intentions into action over the course of the pilot, results demonstrate that FCC's budgeting interventions were successful in enabling non-budgeters who indicated that they did not know where to begin in creating a budget for themselves. So at the end of our pilot, we see that 18% of our non-budgeters, the people who did not know where to begin, created a budget for themselves, which is amazing. Furthermore, our results demonstrate that the interventions were even successful in changing the behavior of non-budgeters who said that they had no intention of making a budget by the end of the project. And what we see here is that 22% of our non-budgeters, people who in the beginning said, I don't have any intention of creating a budget, created a budget for themselves. And we also see that about 36%, so the 25 and the 11% said that now they have an intent to create a budget, which is one step towards making the change, right? So in summary, individuals who did not have a budget and who progressed through the program demonstrated statistically significant improvements in all three of the metrics that we tracked. So knowledge, confidence, and behavior. And our key messages here are that financial literacy interventions delivered through a mobile application increased knowledge and confidence related to budgeting, but it also enabled our non-budgeters to begin budgeting. So directly targeting financial literacy messaging and resources to consumers has the potential to result in positive behavior change on a large scale, and it could improve the financial well-being for a large number of Canadians. We also note here that the technology facilitated the measurement of behavior over time, which is often a challenge for us. As well, it was relatively easy to create a comparative sample and make modifications. So in terms of next steps for FCC, we do plan to continue our budgeting research through the Carrot Rewards mobile app. And we also intend to follow up with individuals to assess the impact that budgeting has had on their financial well-being, as well as explore any potential barriers to budgeting. So these results we hope to be available in the fall. We're actually hosting a research symposium in Toronto at Rotman. So we do hope that the results will be available and we will share those then. The objectives of our research will be to assess how knowledge and confidence has persisted over the year, determine if individuals are still budgeting, determine how individuals are still budgeting, understand how budgeters differ from non-budgeters, and identify potential barriers to budgeting. So that's the end of my presentation. We still have lots of time left. I'd be happy to take any questions and hear your comments. Also wanted to mention that the agency uses Canada's financial literacy blog to share and promote financial literacy research being conducted across Canada. So please check it out. If you just Google Canada's financial literacy blog, it'll bring you directly to the page. Please share all the work that's being done across Canada, and you can even use our hashtag #SpinLitResearch.
Okay, great. Thanks so much, Marcie. Great presentation. So if you have anyone has any questions, feel free to put them in the chat tab. I guess I'll start us off. So I was actually curious about, first off, kind of the reward structure. So did individuals end up getting rewards every time they saved? Or every time they stuck to a budget? How did that work out?
So the rewards were structured in such a way that every time an individual completed the intervention or the questions, they would receive loyalty reward points of their choice. They could also receive loyalty reward points for clicking out on FCC's resources. So for example, at the end of our interventions, we included a link to the FCC's budgeting calculator, as well as FCC's budgeting tip sheet, and individuals were incentivized to earn extra rewards for going and accessing those resources. In terms of the reward structure, they would receive the same amount of rewards for each intervention. So it wasn't a kind of a decreased rewarding structure. I know a lot of behavioral economic principles are using this in some of their research. to decrease the amount of rewards as the intervention goes on. But for this one, we use the same amount for each intervention.
Great. One more question I had. I thought it was very interesting that there were differences in confidence in budgeting between men and women. That's something that, at least in behavioral economics, we see a lot of. And there's a lot of ongoing research about kind of this confidence gap. But what's also interesting is that a lot of times men and women's behaviors tend to not be so different. So even though men might be a lot more confident in their ability to do a task, they end up scoring about the same as women. So I was wondering if that difference in confidence actually didn't really lead to a difference in actual budgeting practices between men and women.
You know, I would have to go back and double check the numbers, but I believe you are absolutely right. We did see the difference in confidence, but there were no significant differences when we looked at the budgeting behavior for men and women. It's really interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's very interesting. It's pretty interesting and widely applicable phenomenon. So, yeah. Let's see. And then I guess just from a research design standpoint, how did you all go about choosing BC, Newfoundland, and Ontario as your sites?
So that was really beyond the control of the agency. The Public Health Agency had an agreement with the Ministry of Health in British Columbia. So they were the first provincial government to use the Care Rewards app. So for the first 3 or 6 months, I can't remember exactly what it was, but Care Rewards was only available in that province, the province of BC, and then it was rolled out to Newfoundland. So that's when we conducted our first pilot. And then as soon as Ontario, Ministry of Ontario came on board and the interventions were available in Ontario, that's when we released, again, the same interventions that we had in Newfoundland and BC with some minor tweaks. So the provinces were really beyond our control. It was more the Public Health Agency of Canada and Care Insights who were managing the rollout of that and who continue to do so. We would love to see this app be available nationally, and I do think that's the plan, but they would be more able to speak to that.
Great. Make sure. And then just a curiosity of mine, how many participants did you have in the study itself?
Yeah, so in all 3 provinces, we reached about 200,000 Canadians. And the response rate for the very first intervention was approximately 40%. So, and about half of those did not have a budget. So we reached about 40,000 non-budgeters in total. And then as we targeted the non-budgeters, we saw that the response rate increased from 40% to about 75%, which was really something as well. It tells a story that people are more interested in content that's relevant to them, right? So yeah, it was really a great sample size.
Yeah, absolutely. So we actually have our summer bear group that is watching this on their lunch break, and they submitted a question, and they were wondering how you measured the confidence of individuals in your results, and what any limitations might that have had on your conclusions.
So all of the pre and post measures were measured using self-reported data. The confidence was that one confidence question. So how confident are you in your budgeting ability? So that was the only question that we used to measure confidence. I know the financial capability survey uses a series of questions to look at the confidence levels. For the purpose of this study, we just had one question. So it is a limitation of our study. And self-reported data, again, is also a limitation.
Great. And then I think one more question from their group. So what are the potential implications that your research may have for financial planners? And in particular, how might they interact with their clients differently given your findings?
In terms of financial planners, the implications directly for financial planners. I mean, you know, I think this app or the mobile technology offers an interesting opportunity to provide targeted financial education messaging to all Canadians. You know, Carrot Rewards is not only limited to working with the Government of Canada. I do know that they're open to partnerships with other nonprofit organizations and other private companies as well. So there's always an opportunity for any organization or business to develop these types of messaging to send to clients or to Canadians.
Yeah, very good point. Very good point. So if we don't have any other further questions, I think we will begin to wrap up a bit early. So with that, I'd like to thank Marcie for being here today again. So the final edited video from this webinar will be on our webpage. It'll be under the sub-tab labeled Events. And we have an exciting slate of presenters for next fall and next spring, but we will be off during the summer to take some well-deserved R&R from the webinars. And we have a very exciting list of speakers that will be up on our website within the month. So I know you all will be waiting with anticipation for that, and we can't wait to see you all in the fall. So with that, I'd like to thank Marcie again for being here. And for everyone who's still with us, you can exit your WebEx screen by just clicking on the top left-hand corner, right-hand corner of your screen and clicking the X. So thank you all for being here, and have a good rest of the day.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Patrick, as well, for having me. Please, again, do not hesitate to contact me. I'm more than happy to discuss this research in more detail, talk about our national research plan, and if there's questions about any of the other research that the agency is conducting, I'd be happy to direct you to the appropriate person. So thank you so much again.
Great. Thanks, Marcie.